Welcome, everyone. Good to see you all. Thank you for joining our live session today. We'll give everyone a few moments to just settle in. So wonderful to see everyone's faces. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Today is our session is over Module 6, Navigating Life with Mindfulness and Heart. And crazy to think, but after this session, we only have 3 sessions until the end of our training. And last time we met, I mentioned a survey that Banyan sent out to you about the midpoint course or the midpoints feedback survey of the course. And I wanted to just say a big thank you to everyone who filled out the survey and for your responses. It really means a lot to us. And so let's go on to today's session. Today we'll have our welcoming and opening meditation with our dear teacher, La Sarmiento. And then we'll go through a brief overview of Module 6. We'll go into breakout rooms for 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions and sharing with Law. And as always, if you need support, please message me, the host, and I will try to assist you as quickly as possible. And I'm really happy to welcome and introduce you to our dear teacher, Law. Law's pronouns are they, them, and they have been practicing Vipassana meditation since 1998. They are a teacher and mentor in our Banyan community and a contributor to the Happier app. They were a retreat teacher with Tara Brock and the guiding teacher of the BIPOC and LGBTQIA Sanghas with the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, D.C. Law is also a mentor for MMTCP and the lead teacher of the Virginia Inward Bound Mindfulness Education teen retreats. They completed the Spirit Rock Dharma leader training in 2012 and teach retreats all around the United States. And as an immigrant and non-binary queer Filipinx American, Law is committed to creating access to and sharing teachings and practices that alleviate suffering, cultivate true happiness, and support the liberation of all beings, especially through song and laughter. And Law lives outside of Baltimore, Maryland, with their life partner Wendy and rescue pup Bader, and enjoys building Legos, writing Dharma spoof songs on their ukulele. And Law, it's a real treat to have you with us today. Thanks for everything that you do and that you are. And I'll turn over to you whenever you're ready.
It's really good to be together. It's a short meditation, so we can transition from whatever we were doing to be here together. So kindly take a moment to body and posture that would enjoy wherever sitting, standing, lying. So allow your eyes to close or create cleanses in the nose, worries or concerns of the day this next little while. The contact of your feet or parts of your body with the surface beneath it. If you're sitting, feeling the weight of your seat on your chair or cushion as you begin to establish a sense of groundedness and dignity in your posture. The dignity of remembering the worthiness of belonging and existence on the planet. Beginning at the top of your head, your feet, breath to any areas of acute stress. And now imagine as best you can the vast, open, spacious sky above your loved ones and wide ancestors in front. Now is most welcome here, and all welcome. Now I'd like to offer of self-compassion that we can give to ourselves, mentors, as human beings. May I accept myself just may I be kind and when I'm suffering. May I do the best I can in each moment. Find my heart and mind to understanding rather than criticism towards myself or others. And may I trust that I am enough. Noticing what it feels like to have these phrases wash over any thoughts and allowing them to move through. May I accept myself just as I am. Bring best I can in each moment. May I my heart and mind towards understanding rather than criticism towards myself or others. And may I wash away and find your breath. Feel that sense of dignity in your posture and gently return to the Zoom. Thank you, friends, for your practice.
Law, this is Mackie from Banyan Team.
Yes.
We're getting a few chats that your audio is a little hard to hear, and I'm seeing that the bandwidth has, if you can see on the corner, the red bars. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if maybe there's a way that we could turn off your video for a little bit so people could hear you more clearly, or
Okay.
um, if maybe we can just take a brief pause and maybe move to a different location. But yeah, I've gotten several messages that it's a little bit choppy.
Ooh, okay. How's it sounding right now?
You're sounding very clear right now. Maybe if you just say a few things in a row, just so we can test it before you get started with your talk, that would be super helpful.
Okay. All right. So, how things are going with technology and practicing with.
Yeah, it's still cutting out a bit, Law.
Hmm,
Um, Do you want to try? We're gonna just do this impromptu, just for quality of call. Do you want to try to leave the Zoom if it's not too disruptive and come back and see if that helps with your connection? Sometimes that will fix it.
okay. I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Law. Oh, the joys of technology in the Zoom ethers. Thank you all for your patience, and for your messages. It's always hard to know if it's like on one end, if it's on your own end, or if it's someone else. So yeah, it was helpful to see that you all were experiencing that. So thank you for your messages.
Can't hear me. Me now?
It's a little spotty still, Law. I'm wondering if I'm just trying to find you in all of the Zoom squares now. If you want to just talk and see,
Okay. Let's move me up. There we go.
there we go. Yeah, let's try maybe with the video off and see one more time.
Okay. Turn my video off. Thank you for your patience. If it happens. So I hope most of you have had an opportunity. Young's video did understanding what's important to demonstrate interactive guided meditation students methods to integrate mindfulness practices into daily life and relationship. Perspective of how I show up as both a mentor and a student to offer a glimpse, seek out a mentor or spiritual direction because they're in a place of suffering. Acknowledgement of our suffering is hard to admit, and we often find some bizarre comfort in.
Law, this is Mackie. You're still cutting in and out. And I actually, one of our community members just had a really great suggestion that I think we might want to try is what if you called in from your phone that way and we just did audio through your phone and it's not through your Wi-Fi connection? Would you be
Okay,
open to trying that and seeing?
sure. Let me just, so do I just mute my audio on my computer? Sorry, I'm a little
Yeah.
bit of a Luddite when,
No, that's okay.
all right.
So,
Okay, can you hear me now, Mackie?
yes, Law, loud and clear. So good.
Oh, okay. All right. Um, shall I turn my video on? Let's try that.
Sure, yeah.
Zoom.
You're getting lots of emoji love.
Okay. This is why we practice, right?
Yeah,
Okay. I've never really joined Zoom on my phone, so I'm just gonna talk to you. You may not see me. You have my um sense there. Is that okay?
of
I'm
course.
also just noticing I'm feeling a little slightly thrown here, but thank you for your patience, friends. Really, really appreciate it. So shall I just go ahead with the talk part and then we'll jump into the breakout rooms and then go into the Q&A?
That
Would that
sounds
work?
great, Law. Yeah,
Okay. All
yeah.
right. So, and let me start at the very beginning here in case it wasn't coming through the first time around. So, I hope most of you have had an opportunity to watch Jack and Young's video outlining navigating life with mindfulness and heart, which included understanding what spiritual direction is and why it's important, demonstrating interactive guided meditation skills, and describing to students methods to integrate mindfulness practices into daily life and relationships. So I'm going to approach this short talk I'm about to give from the perspective of how I show up as both a mentor and a student to offer a glimpse of one way to be in this dynamic. Often folks seek out a mentor or spiritual direction because they're in a place of suffering, almost like hitting bottom and realizing the only way to go is up. Acknowledgement of our suffering, though, is hard to admit, and we often find some bizarre comfort in the familiar rather than being in the unknown. So, as mentors, meeting our students where they are is key, and then we cheer them on from there. So, many of you may not know that I had no ambition at all to be a teacher of mindfulness or the Dharma or a mentor. And it wasn't until I started practicing with the Insight Meditation Community of Washington with Tara Brach 27 years ago now that I hit my bottom and really needed to understand who I was as a human being. And so, what I really appreciated about having Tara as both a teacher and a mentor was just her belief in me, her ability to see my struggle, to have compassion for it, and to gently guide me in a way that evoked my own wisdom that was within me through the practice, through the teachings. And it was her unconditional, radical acceptance of who I was that had me begin to trust and believe in myself. And in a lot of ways, this is what I think being a mentor is really about. And so I have been blessed with many teachers and many mentors in my 27 years of practice. And it's pretty much the same. You know, it is this more than being a sage on the stage, being this guide on the side, being someone that accompanies us on our path, that cheers us on when we feel disgruntled or hopeless or just, yeah, not really knowing what we're doing. And so back in 2007, I Googled trans Dharma teacher. I knew there had to be one, and there was just one at that time. And her name was Kachiona Reed, and she's a teacher in Southern California. She's part of the Order of Interbeing with Thich Nhat Hanh. And when I first asked her, you know, how do you even begin to approach the Dharma? mindfulness. She said, you just find it in everything. And so having faith and trust in our own practice and in my own approach to teaching was how I found my way. I didn't come up as a teacher through certification programs or trainings to become a teacher or a mentor. I had to kind of figure it out by myself. And so through my practice and through my experience of life and integrating these practices into my life. And in a lot of ways, they are not separate at all from each other. Life is practice and practice is life. I began to learn to accept, love, and trust myself in this experience of being human. And doing our own work, committing to practice, cultivating community, cultivating humility, compassion, and grace is so key. And to me, in a lot of ways, embodying that within ourselves is the transmission that we offer our mentees and our students. And so it is so key that as we are guiding, accompanying our students and mentees on this path, that we continue to work on ourselves. You know, we are a work in progress. I don't think we're ever quite finished. And I think that's why, if you believe this, sometimes we have lifetimes to keep practicing with it. So, my dear teacher, the late Eric Kolvig, said at the end of one retreat, if there's anything that you take away from this retreat, let it be these two things: to practice every day and to notice when you're suffering. And so it's in that noticing when we're suffering that if we can have the courage and willingness and trust to reach out to another, to offer that support that we can't do this alone, whether it be through a community or a teacher or a mentor, um, to be able to, and so as a mentor and a teacher, to create a space where folks can find you accessible, warm, friendly, compassionate, non-judgmental, as much as possible, you know, and we are going to have judgments arising as we listen to people's stories. That's so human. And, you know, what we do with that awareness is, you know, to hold it and have compassion for ourselves that we thought it. And I remember my training as a teacher actually came as being an apprentice with Tara Brach. At retreats that she would teach, I would sit in on her group meetings. And I remember her many times over and over again sitting with someone and working with them and just noticing how they would just keep going back and spiraling, you know, and not getting any of the cues or the guidance she was offering. And after that meeting, I said to her, it's like, how do you be when someone is, you know, just kind of in their habit energy, in their conditioning? And no matter what you do to intervene, you know, it doesn't seem to be working. And this is all she said. She said, I just keep loving them through it. And that was just a really powerful statement, you know, that has stuck with me for these last 14 years that I've been teaching, that we are just here to be present with each other, that we are here to show up, be present, listen deeply, have compassion, and support, you know, the student that's in front of us, knowing and trusting their own innate goodness in the Dharma, in their own Buddha nature, that they will find their way and that we can support them and guide them in whatever ways are needed in that moment. So the teachings and practices are guidelines for us, and it's really about discovering what works best for you as a mentor, and teaching from like what we know, and being that presence that is steady and available and there as fully as possible. And so it means in a lot of ways taking good care of ourselves and resourcing when we need to, stepping back if life feels a bit overwhelming and a bit too much. Because it's really difficult to give from a place and offer from a place of generosity if we're stressed. So that, you know, our presence in our dynamic with our students is not out of a place of obligation, but out of generosity, love, and compassion. And so the other piece of this module was about teachings and practices, in everyday life. And one thing that I still do and have been doing for several years is what I call stealth metta or stealth loving kindness. And I used to live in DC, Washington, DC, for about 30 years. And when you're walking down the sidewalk, it's very seldom that anyone will look at you or acknowledge your presence. And so I noticed for myself that that was just really hard, that I really wanted to connect. So I decided that I would offer loving kindness phrases to whomever crossed my path or whomever I was in line with, whether at the grocery store, the bank, on the metro, on the subway. I would wish people, may you be happy, may you be peaceful, may you be free from suffering, may you live with ease. Just one phrase to each person. And after about a year of doing this, I noticed that people started looking at me when I would look at them. They would even say hi sometimes or nod their heads, but acknowledge that I was there. And so I said to my partner, Sweetie, do you realize that people in DC are getting friendlier? And she's like, No, they're not. And I said, Well, I'm noticing people are smiling at me and saying hi more. And she said, It's because you have a yes face, like you invite that. And that's actually what metta is. It's not only these phrases, but it's this energetic that we put out into the world. And so I invite you to maybe try that, when you're at the grocery store and you're passing people's carts, just, you know, looking at them and just offering them a phrase of well wishes. Another thing that I do is I set an intention before seeing or speaking with someone that I experience difficult or challenging. I say to myself before I pick up the phone or go see them, you know, may I be patient, may I be loving, may I be compassionate, and may I be accepting. And it just kind of sets this tone, and holds me accountable to being this way when I'm actually interacting with that person. One more thing that I'll offer is that these 4 questions that I always ask myself when I'm having a difficult time. And it's, is my heart open or closed? Do I feel connected or disconnected? Am I free or am I suffering? Do I feel empowered or disempowered? So if my heart is closed, I'm feeling disconnected, I'm suffering, and I'm feeling disempowered, then I know that I need to take a break, take a few breaths, pause, check in with myself, and figure out like what it is that I need in that moment, whether it's a cup of tea, a walk outside, to talk to a friend, whatever it happens to be. And so bringing, this awareness of self and taking care of self are ways to integrate practice into your everyday life. So awakening and awareness doesn't happen overnight. And as a mentor, you're going to probably meet a lot of students that kind of want to get it, and be free from their suffering, their stress, their overwhelm right away. And so inviting this sense of, is it possible to cultivate patience, to accept that life is messy at best, and to get that there's so much that we don't have control over. And I remind my students and mentees this all the time. And when this happens, it just gives us just a little bit more space. And in the social justice realm, I'll just say that when I asked my teacher, Larry Yang, about this, how do we keep engaging, in a world that's so disconnected and divisive right now? And he says, not in this lifetime, law, or several lifetimes thereafter will we ever be on a level playing field. And it doesn't mean we stop trying. And so we do what we can and have to let go of the rest because it's impossible. Racism and hormone transphobia, classism, ageism, none of this is going to go away anytime soon. And so we just keep chipping away and we keep bringing our hearts and open minds to however life is unfolding in front of us. And then to also cultivate joy, humor, fun, connection as fuel to be with the more difficult and challenging aspects of this life. So I'll leave it at that and we'll go into breakout rooms. So I'll turn it over to you, Mackie, to give these instructions.
Thank you, Law. Okay, so yeah, we're to our breakout portion of the section. We are going to break out into breakout rooms for 15 minutes. That means there'll be about three people in your breakout room. Some of you might have just one other person. And the breakout room prompts today are: what is one aspect of your life where you find it difficult to bring mindfulness and heart? And then when that arises, how do you meet it? So I just dropped that into the chat for everyone and I'll broadcast it to the rooms. But um, once you get into the room, maybe the person with the shortest hair can go first and just keep track of time, about 5 minutes per share for each of you, and then you'll be brought back into the larger room. Welcome back, everyone, from the breakout room sessions. We'll now move into the Q&A portion of this session with Law. So if you have any questions specifically, please use the raise hand functionality and we'll call on you to ask a question of Law.
Yeah, or any sharings around how the breakout group was for you. That's also welcome here. Yes, Jasmine, please. I think you need to unmute her, Mackie.
Yeah, 1 second. When she put her
Okay.
hand down, she got lost, but here we go. We're the
Uh,
Zoom.
Thank you. Sorry, I was too quick to put the hand down. I thought I'll forget if I don't do it right away.
No, that's okay. And trying to spotlight you. 1 second, Jasmine. Here you are, just so everyone can see you too. Here we go. There, all good.
Hello. Thank you, La. Thank you, Mackie. Nice that the video is working now so we can see you and hear you at the same time.
Aw, thank you, dear.
Well, when we went to the breakout room, and really grateful to the people who I spoke to. Initially, I felt a little bit of a blank, but then what came up for me was actually something I really am struggling with, and so I'm looking to hear what you might have to say. Um, I struggle the most to stay mindful and compassionate um, in moments where people are harming others. And I guess the part that I struggle with is about having boundaries and staying with an open heart. Like, sometimes they feel in opposition of each other, or at least that's how it is sometimes in the moment felt to me that this sort of protector comes out.
Mm,
In a good way and not in an unkind way, but it feels like my heart, it gets closed at times. And
mhm.
I do believe I remember you speaking a little bit about this, and you said, some keeping it open 1% or 100%, there's a difference, but I would love to hear you just speak about this side of both being a protected but not closed off.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Jasmine. Such a beautiful and powerful question. We get a lot of practice for that these days, whether it be personally or globally. So, what I have found for myself is that the constant practice of loving kindness, compassion, like whether you use phrases or embodiment practices or whatever, that we do that on an ongoing basis rather than on an as needed basis, really kind of creates this foundation for ourselves to sometimes we're going to forget, like in the moment when we're being activated by somebody else, we'll be like, oh, here we go again. And then we'll go into story about, how much we dislike this person or don't agree with this person, etc. And so having that foundation, as an ongoing practice helps continue to open my heart, and reminds me like, this is actually a kind of a big ask, that we're being invited to keep our hearts as open as possible. And what you're referring to is that rather than an off and on switch of like our hearts being completely opened or completely shut, it's like, can it be a dimmer switch where there's this spectrum or this continuum of, okay, when I'm playing with my dog, it's like 99% open, but when I'm listening to the news, it's 0.05% open. And so it's still open. And something that I also have to remember is not only that I am suffering, is that this other person that may be causing harm or that you feel like you're experiencing harm from them is also suffering. Someone that's suffering doesn't cause harm, because there's no real reason to. And so and that's where like our compassion practice kicks in, is when we can open up to that. But if we are nowhere near being able to open up to that, then we have compassion to give to ourselves, you know, and that we maybe set this intention that maybe one day in the future, I'll be able to have more understanding or more compassion for this individual. And maybe at this time, I need to disengage or disconnect from them. And so it's kind of like, you can be in my heart, but you can't be in my life. Like this is not okay. I don't want to enable more harmful behavior in our interactions with each other. So until we can come to that place, then I'm going to need to, you know, protect myself. And I often will send loving kindness to the person that I experience as difficult or someone that I'm really struggling with, because they need it too. And the more that I can remind myself that they are suffering as well, that allows me to, gives me an opportunity to practice, compassion for them as well. So that's what keeps my heart pliable, so that's not completely shut down or I'm just like totally throwing them out. Um, they're struggling too. But if we don't have the capacity to do that, then we need to tend to ourselves first. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense and really helpful reminders. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome, Jasmine. Okay, let's see in the gallery here. All right, so y'all got it down pat. Don't need my help. Yes, Sarah, please.
Hi.
Hey.
I just want to say thank you for your presence, um, for your story, for showing up, um, and coming to teaching, as a trans person and kind of looking for that and and then becoming it. I think that's such a beautiful, important thing to do in this world, and I really thank you. Um, Yeah, and I just feel really touched. I was so touched by your for the first um training session you did. It was really meaningful to me, and as I work for a queer organization um and provide mindfulness within that context. And so it just feels inspiring to have alignment in that way. So I just wanted to say thank you. I didn't have much to ask today.
Uh,
Just gratitude, and looks like other people are popping up, so I'm gonna
hmm,
exit.
yeah, thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you for what you're doing, as well. And when I always joke about this story about when I first walked into Tara's Wednesday night class, other than the Buddha sitting next to her, I was the only other person of color in the room. And so I was very used to, when I first started meditating, like being the only one. And I vowed that, when I taught, that I would always come out as who I am. And because to me, like, exposure is education, and it can break all kinds of stereotypes of what people think of other people, and it's also just very liberating, for me, and it also invites others like me to feel seen and gotten in the space. And so yeah, so thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right, let's see, Anna.
Hello, La.
Hi,
Hi.
dear.
Um, so I'm going to be I want to be very careful with my question because in any way this question comes from my own curiosity and my desire to open my heart. And I also understand that it can be very sensitive. And my question is around how, as a white cisgender woman, I build up and bring more awareness to myself when I communicate with all the different people of people representing different things, like including the skin color, including the gender orientation. And also maybe if you can recommend any sources where I can actually learn more, because there's never an intention to hurt anybody. And I also understand that just by not knowing, I might hurt someone.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, what could you recommend? Where to learn, who to talk
Yeah,
to, you know,
yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Anna, for your courage and vulnerability in asking that question. And I think it's so important, just to acknowledge, that yes, there are differences that we experience on, sort of the relative plane of existence. And the absolute truth is that we're all one, but we don't treat each other in that way on this plane. And so as, more and more people begin to recognize, that it's important to at least learn about or educate ourselves about other people's experiences. And so there are a couple of there's an organization called White Awake that offers like workshops and resources for people to understand white privilege, white supremacy, particularly in the United States. That's one. Resma Menaken's, My Grandmother's Hands is another really powerful book to examine, our different aspects of privilege. And, even for somebody like me who identifies as a, you know, um, non-binary queer person of color, it's like, I have a lot of privilege too, in terms of I'm financially secure, I'm highly educated, this, that, and the other. But, if someone sees me on the street, they might think differently and treat me differently. And so I think it's really important work for all of us to identify, for ourselves what that is, where we are on the hierarchy of like power and privilege in our various, countries of where we are, and it's experienced differently in the United States and it is, elsewhere and vice versa. So I would say check out Wide Awake. If you just Google Wide Awake, you probably find something there. And Resma Menaken's book, My Grandmother's Hands, would be a starting point.
Thank you
So,
so much.
yeah,
I
thank you.
appreciate that. Also enjoying the book of Larry Young.
Yeah, Awakening Together.
It's been very helpful. And yeah,
Yeah.
I was born and raised in Russia, and I've been living in the States now for 9 years. So it's also a very much ongoing internal process of
Hmm.
all of what we're talking about, applying it to both different countries and looking how it is here, how it is there, and something that I thought was a complete norm, seeing that it's actually not okay, and how
Mm.
much guilt and shame comes out of this. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, and sitting with that.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just noticing,
Yeah,
when guilt and shame arises around this,
yeah.
and it's like, okay, it's there. And so we acknowledge it. And then so knowing that that's present, like, how can I, understand better or educate myself or, just learn. And we're all learning. And so I'm a big, like, the world is hard enough. Let's not be hard on ourselves, And so you're just bringing up this question. And to someone like me, it's like I welcome that, and it just shows me that, there's a sincerity in your willingness to engage in that process of greater understanding. So
Thank you
may
so
you
much
keep going, dear.
for your kindness and for creating the space where it felt safe enough to ask this question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Take care. Yes, Rami,
Hi, La. It's nice to meet you.
nice to
And
meet you too.
I'm very tired, but I wanted to take the chance and ask a question, so I hope I can make sense. Um, I appreciated, even though you're cutting out a bit, I really appreciated your loving kindness meditation at the beginning. And I was having a situation this year that I felt treated very unkindly by a person. And I noticed that it was very hard for me and that I kind of kept forgetting. I really went into conditioning probably and kept forgetting self-love. And then I have to remember again, but it's really a long process. And it's so much easier to forget and to go into self-judgment. And I notice it, how hard it can be for me um, to it's not I believe that I love myself, but it just seems to be easier sometimes to go, as you said at the beginning, to go into this um well, as I said, self-blame and self-judgment. So I wonder what you have to share about that, if you maybe anything really is welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Rami. So, these messages, that we tell ourselves, like it's just habit, and often when, you know, like the example that you shared about somebody feeling harm from somebody else, it's like it's harder to remember, when it's coming from outside that somebody's telling you something that hurts. And so I'm constantly asking myself the question, what am I forgetting to remember right now? What am I forgetting to remember? And oftentimes it is, that I am enough, that as
Yeah.
best I can, that I can accept myself just as I am, that I'm doing the best I can in each moment. If I could do it differently, I would, but I didn't. And so there's just, I don't have tattoos, but if I were to ever tattoo something on me, it would be when in doubt, more compassion, right? It's really like, and like what I was saying, with the first question, it's really about building's foundation. We don't ask you to do the loving kindness practice just to make it a practice. It really is reprogramming our systems, our hearts to think differently, to be more open, to be more loving, to be kinder, more compassionate, not just towards other people, but to ourselves, especially. And it's one of the things that I'm so grateful to have landed in the lap of Tara Brach early on. It was like, it was all about self-compassion and self-love and self-respect. And so it's almost like at this point in my life, I have no idea like what that means to not like myself, or to berate myself. It's just like it doesn't really exist anymore. It's like, oh, I make mistakes, or yeah, oh, I got that wrong. Oh well, and just like I'm human, and I'm just doing the best I can. And so when you just notice those thoughts arising, just like maybe gently just put your hand on your heart. It's like, oh, wow, that hurt. Or like, I'm really struggling, because it can
Yeah.
just be this, um, playlist or tape, that just goes on and on. And we don't have to believe everything we think,
Yeah.
that's, we don't have to be run by our minds. We actually become master of our minds, and we get to discern what we choose to believe and what we don't choose to believe. I used to teach teens mindfulness, and I would say to them all the time, we're constantly telling each other stories about ourselves and each other. So if you're going to bother telling yourself a story, tell yourself a good one. Stop telling yourself shitty stories. It's not helpful. It's not.
The thing is, it's when the going gets rough, it's more difficult to do that.
Yes.
That's when the forgetting,
Yes.
and that's what I'm trying to say. This
Yeah.
forgetting, right, and then to remember again. So yeah,
Yeah. So that's what, I said earlier about my teacher, Eric Kolvig, when he said, notice when you're suffering. Notice when you're suffering, because when we're caught in this spiral, it's like we're caught in the middle of it. We don't even know that we're suffering. And so it's like, and that's where the practice, of mindfulness comes in. It's like, oh, how am I feeling in my body right now? Like, am I in my body right now?
Mm.
Am I feeling tension or stress? The body knows what's going on. The mind can make up all kinds of stories about what's going on. But when we can take a moment, check in, be aware of what's happening, and then take care. from there. But it is hard. It definitely is hard to be mindful when you're totally stressed out. So
Yeah, and then just to acknowledge that sometimes it just takes time, right? I mean,
yes,
I think you were
yeah.
saying that too. You were saying to be patient, right? So it's a little bit process.
Exactly. So maybe like bit by bit, you get like you catch yourself, in less time. So rather than going off,
Yeah.
too far. So yeah, thank you for your question, dear. Best
Thank you, Lam.
wishes. You're welcome. Yes, John.
Hi, La. Thank you
Hey,
for
John.
the talk and for holding the space for all of us.
Mm,
My question is over the 25 or 30 years that you've been practicing and going through your own journey of self-discovery and personal growth, um, what have you found to be the balance between being guided by a person, being told the right path and what to do, versus discovering your own path and making the mistakes and then getting the lesson and realizing that for your own self? Because
mm,
I do realize I have a tendency sometimes to step in the role of a teacher and to tell a person what they ought to do. But I also realize it's not always helpful because at different stages of my own life, some people told me, okay, you might explore this or do that. And it didn't really land until
mm,
6 months later or a year later when I personally made mistakes. And then I was like, oh, okay, now I understand.
mm, mm.
So, as a mentor, as a teacher, how do you balance these two to be the most effective at what you do?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, John. It's a really, really great question. So, I tend towards not telling people what to do. I tend towards really listening deeply to where a person is and asking them, what ways do you like to receive support and guidance? Um, I'll mostly like share stories about my own experience with practice and give examples of that. Unless they specifically ask me, to give them feedback or support them, I really trust and I try to, when I work with them, ask them questions, like try to evoke the wisdom that they already have within themselves out. And usually they, if they have a question about something and I ask questions back to them, they will eventually answer their own question. And that's the most empowering thing is when a student gets it for themselves. Because otherwise, there can be this reliance on something external to them, for that support, for that guidance, for that help. And for me, my approach to mentoring and teaching is really more about um, I want them to feel empowered to know and trust and deepen their own practice, and that they can do it, and that I am here to support, to cheer them on, to maybe ask questions that can help them access their own wisdom around it. Because I'm kind of inherently kind of like a fixer. Like, okay, you got a problem. Well, let me tell you what you need to do about it,
Mm.
which in a lot of ways kind of disempowers the person. And then they become a little bit more dependent or reliant on me. And this is their life, and they have to live their lives. And so for me as a mentor or teacher, it's really empowering them to yeah, understand and take responsibility and accountability for their choices and things. And, in what ways can I support them in, yeah, just kind of waking up a little bit to what, in terms of what I see that they may not necessarily see, and creating a dynamic where there would be this willingness from them to listen and be open to what I have to share and to be able to like, take what they need and leave the rest behind. They don't have to believe. I always say like, I'll just offer what it is that I know from my own experience, um, and then you can decide and choose for yourself. And that's what
Mm.
many of my teachers and mentors have done. And because we won't be able to embody it or get it unless we actually are doing that work. Like what you were describing beautifully of like, yeah, I got that teaching, but I didn't get till much later on what that actually meant. And that will stick with you more than anyone's like words. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I absolutely agree with every word you said. What makes it a bit tricky for me is that throughout my life, there were a lot of moments where I received guidance from people
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
really had a positive impact on me
Mhm.
and really
Mhm.
helped me.
Yeah.
And in those moments, if that person did not give me that guidance, I don't know what would have happened. I might have landed on the inside myself a day later. I
Mhm.
don't know.
Mhm.
But there are quite a few moments where I received guidance and it really helped me out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, totally. And I have too, for sure. And sometimes you will, as a teacher and mentor, drop, something that, you may have intentionally or unintentionally, said that will have, a great impact on your students for sure.
Mm.
So yeah, yeah,
Beautiful. Thank you very much, La.
yeah. One example I'll share, and this wasn't with a mentor or teacher, but with my therapist, after like 10 years of being in therapy, I sat down in her office one day and said, all these retreats that I go to, all these self-help books that I read, coming to therapy, all this stuff, like ultimately it's not about being happy, is it? And she said, well, what do you think it's about? And I said, I think it's about being fully alive. And she said, La, being fully alive is way better than being happy.
Mm.
You know, that in and of itself. But she asked me what I thought it was, and evoked this from me. And then she just affirmed that,
Mm.
yeah, it is. And that totally changed the trajectory of how I approached life, that
Mm.
there wasn't this positive outcome that was going to be at the end of all my hard diligence and work. That it was just like life is going to keep coming at me. And how am I going to keep showing up for it, no matter what it is?
Beautiful. Being alive is much more important than being happy.
Being fully
Fully
alive,
alive,
yeah, is way better than being
way
happy.
better. Beautiful.
Yeah,
Thank you. That really
yeah,
resonated.
yeah. Thank you, John. Yes, Michael.
Hi, Law. Thank you
Hello.
for being here. Thank you for leading the session. I have a question that connects back to the first um, question that was posed by the first person. I think it was Jasmine. She was talking
Mhm,
about, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but I think she was talking about witnessing an act of harm, somebody doing harm.
mhm,
And you were, in your response, you were talking about the importance of feeling compassion for the other person because if they weren't suffering, then they wouldn't be causing harm. And I get that. I
mhm,
totally understand that. But then at the same time, I do feel, and I have a feeling that you would probably agree, that there are times to engage, right?
mhm,
There are times to disrupt, to interrupt. And from my own personal experience, I think about the times when I did not speak up, when someone was, disrespecting me or another person in my presence. Um, I was witnessing an act of microaggression, some subtle form of
mhm.
racism or homophobia or whatever it was, and I didn't say anything, and I really regretted it. I,
Yeah,
to this
yeah.
day, I can think of things that I really regret.
Mhm,
And so I was wondering if you could talk about, um, respond to it. And I know that it's a difficult question to answer because there are just so many different situations, that come up. Like there are things that are very subtle, things that are very
mhm,
overt. Um, And um, and so yeah, could you speak for a moment about like, I guess number one is deciding when to engage, and then number two, like, what things do you keep in mind when you're engaging and you're trying to, I don't know how you would phrase it, so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
Mhm.
if you're disrupting um, a microaggression or an act of homophobia, racism, whatever it may be, yeah, what skills do you bring to that?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because it's a hard one. It's a hard one
Yeah.
for.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Michael. It's a great question, dear. And it just varies, right? Depending on what the situation is. Whether you're out at a protest, there are a lot of people and a lot of high like energy, happening versus somebody misgendering me at a restaurant, right? Or something like that. So it can go for this range. And um, so I think this is where our wisdom kicks in, where we need to discern, what would be the appropriate action to take in that moment, what would be the appropriate speech to take in that moment. And a guideline that I use for myself is, okay, if I'm feeling a charge in any sort of way, it's not a place for me to speak from. So if I'm feeling activated, or like I'm starting to get really angry, or emotional about the situation, then I know that usually whatever's going to come out of my mouth in that moment is not going to probably be the most skillful thing.
Mhm.
And so um, let's use an example. Okay, like if I witness something like happening and I'm noticing myself like getting really like upset or charged about it, like if I can take a beat or two, like 2 or 3 breaths, and say like, and then speak from a place of non-judgment and non-blame. Just say like, when this happened, I felt this way. Like this is the impact that it had on me. And so to remain in connection, with you, I would really like to ask you to not say that anymore, or do something, make a request of how I would like things to be otherwise. And so nonviolent communication has been a really powerful tool in a lot of ways, of expressing um, whether it be upset or um, anger or whatever it happens to be, but from a place that does not judge or blame the other person. Because as soon as you judge or blame somebody for what they did, whether it be their behavior or who you think they are, you're just correct, creating disconnect. You're like creating a division between the two of you. So it really is about like, is what I'm about to say going to create a sense of understanding, connection, you know, um, in the situation? And if it is, then let me give it a try. And and then the other thing I got to remember is that I need to let go of the outcome of whether or not that's going to land well for the other person. And so there are these 4 universal principles by this teacher named Angeles Arian that I often think about with regards to whether I say something or not. And it's to show up, to pay attention, to speak your truth, and to let go of the outcome. So
Mhm.
show up just to get there, just to be present for it, to pay attention, notice what's happening within you internally and what's going on outside of you externally. To speak your truth. When we speak our truth, we usually don't judge and blame somebody else. This is the impact that harm had on me, or what I see as harm. Um, and then to let go of the outcome. It's like, and how often are we attached to some sort of outcome that prevents us from showing up, paying attention, or speaking our truth, right? And so it really is, this place of like, do I have the energy to be an ally right now? You know? And so a common example I'll use is like at a restaurant, oftentimes wait people will just misgender me all the time. It's like, hey ladies, like, what would you like to have to drink or whatever? And, though I have friends around me that know that that's not how I identify, they don't say anything, you know? And it's kind of like, oh, well, why don't people want to be my ally or love me or want to be there for me, but like what stops them? And that's a very simple example, of kind of a minor thing for me. And then how does that carry into whether we speak up in the world, and to share our voices? And so it really is about, you know, um, grounding through our practice, being aware of what's happening. Can I say what I need to say, with speech that is skillful, wise, and truthful, and connecting versus divisive, and see where you go from there. And they're going to be in situations where, like, it's going to be near to impossible trying to confront someone because they don't really give whatever about what you have to say.
Yeah.
And so then we just let that go, and it's like it's not going to work. It's just going to work me up more, and I'm not going
Right.
to be. Yeah.
I get the part about letting go of the outcome. Um, I definitely understand that. But in the beginning, you talked about, if it's sparking a charge inside me, that maybe that's not the right time to speak. But for me, the charge is a sign that it's something I care about. It's something
Hmm.
that matters. It's
Yeah.
important. And that's not likely for me to like subside later on. If I take a break
Hmm.
and come back to it later on, it's still going to piss me off,
Hmm.
because it's those things that we're talking about are
Yeah.
like values,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and so I don't know. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that for
Yeah.
me, I would it would be it's something I'm gonna have to sit with and think about because so sometimes the anger for me can be a great motivation. I was talking earlier about regret, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there have been times when I did speak out, and it was because I was pissed,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it felt it felt cathartic to me. And I know that's not the point
Hmm.
of it. You're like you were
Hmm.
saying, the
Hmm.
point is connection. But I felt better about speaking as opposed to the times when I didn't speak.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm listening to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do understand that speaking, when you've had time to take a break is probably more effective.
Yeah. And it's this thing too, Michael, where can I hold like this anger? Because the anger is the catalyst to like take it, say something, and hopefully say something that'll be um supportive or helpful or educate or whatever it happens to be. But it's
Mm.
kind of like, if we're trying to fight fire with fire, it doesn't land anywhere, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, in work that I've done in the past called respectful confrontation, it's like, okay, something did blow up and happen. Um, I did get upset about it, but this is not the right time. So let me see if I can, come back to this person, say, I really would like to talk to you about what happened, but I'd like to talk to you at a time when we can both, like we've both kind of settled. And so you can still, respectfully confront the situation and that person, but not from a place of charge, where it can just kind of be back and forth and explosion and all that kind of stuff. So, so I don't think it's ever too late to say something, unless you're like out in the crowd somewhere, you may never ever see this person again. But, sometimes, I asked my teacher, Larry Yang, it's like, when do you choose to like say something or educate someone? And the guideline he gave me was, it depends on the kind of relationship you have with them. Like if they really, really matter to you, then you definitely engage that conversation, and,
mm,
cultivate that relationship. If it's like a stranger, protesting out on the street and da da da, it's like, you know,
yeah,
everybody gets to say what their piece is. And so, and I'm very protective of my inner peace. And so it's like, do I let what that person is saying and whatever, like get to me? It's like, it's not personal to me. It's just, this is what it is. So, yeah. Thank you, Michael. And I think it's possible. And I hear you too, dear. It's like, can I hold this? And this is a real equanimity practice. Can I hold that, this anger that I'm carrying right now? And, can I also engage, in a skillful way while this is happening? So it's kind of the master class of it all. But I trust, that,
Thank you
it's
so much.
practice.
There's a lot to think about there. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, friends. We're at the end here. So thank you so much for being here and showing up. And I just wish you well as you continue to make your way through the program and also in however you choose to serve and share your own wisdom and compassion with the world through teaching or mentoring. So let's close with just a brief loving kindness prayer here. So regrounding in your body and finding your breath again as best you can. And deeply appreciating yourself for making the time to be a part of this session today. And may you be safe from internal and external harm. May you have a calm, clear mind and a peaceful, loving heart. May you be physically strong, healthy, and vital. May you know love, joy, wonder, and wisdom in this life, just as it is. And for all who are dear to us, who share this precious and sometimes challenging life together, for those with whom we work and play, including those who are difficult for us, and for all beings, let us dedicate this prayer for the welfare of all, the ending of suffering, and the rise of happiness and well-being. Thank you, dear friends, for your kind attention, your questions, and we'll see you on the path again. Take care.
Thank you, Law. And I'm going to ask everyone to unmute if you want to say your final goodbyes.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Lan.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Love.
Thank you, love.
Thank you,
Everybody.
Lan.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Lovely to see
Thank you,
you.
love.